Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
I'm great, man. I'm excited for this show. We're kicking off draft season here in a little bit. We got a little bit of news before we start to get into that draft conversation here, but we're way behind the curve from a lot of these other content creators. We spent so much time on free agency, and I think that was a good move by us, but now it's time to, really get into draft season. So I'm excited for that. But more importantly, I'm excited because I'm going to have my mortgage paid off before the Bills have their mortgage paid off. News of the stadium. So I'm super excited about that. As a resident of Buffalo, I'm happy that that's finally sort of off our backs and we don't have to worry about that going into the future here. That was really exciting.
Yeah, and we'll get into that here in a moment, but I want to give a shout out to some guys who are going to help us have an awesome draft time. Our friends over at bookseats.com. Make sure you guys are checking them out. Awesome way to go if you want to be able to go for trips, like if you want to go to the NFL draft. Aaron and myself and Eric Turner are going to be heading out to the NFL draft, representing bookseats.com. They're sending us out there, putting us up at an awesome place out there in a resort, flying us out there in style. It's going to be fantastic. Make sure you check them out. We're going to be really excited as schedule release time comes up when you're getting ready to plan those trips here in the fall. Yeah. You can work with them to be able to figure out, which ones you need to drive to, but you get a hotel, or which ones you need to fly to and have a place to stay, or you want to really splurge on awesome tickets or be able to come back. They got every single option for you, concerts, games, everything that you want. Make sure to check them out. They're awesome to work with. They've been really, really good to us. So excited to be working with them, and you'll be hearing more about bookseats.com all the way up through the draft and afterwards as well.
Yeah, I'm going to hit them up there too, because my brother is forcing me to that Bears game.
Nice.
I put him off a couple of years or whatever, 8 years ago. And he said, I can't put him off this time we're going. So I'm going to be hitting up Book Seats to plan that trip.
Yeah, nice. I like it. I might try to squeeze like a work trip to LA around opening game time. We'll see how that goes. We'll go see SoFi. But as you opened up here, our first topic for the show, the Buffalo Bills stadium deal is official. Obviously, no surprises. We knew that a lot of the things that were thrown out there, all the crazy talk about, whether it's going to be a dome or downtown or relocation or all the crazy stuff, that's been settled for quite a while. Everybody pretty much knew what it was going to be. But now we have official information out there. We know the architects, who are the same guys who worked with some of the famous stadiums, not only in the U.S., so like Gillette and some other stadiums here, but some famous ones with the Premier League. And that when, Executive Vice President for the Bills, Rakua, was asked about, he said that he would look at the Tottenham Spurs Stadium as one of the best examples. And I know a lot of our guys on the Going Long podcast and Air Raid Hour were referencing that one, saying and putting up pictures and everything.
Don't even know what that is.
Pretty cool. It's that the one that he references more of a halo around it with the opening in the middle. Mm-hmm. I know we've seen the ones with the fins, but the discussion has been it's going to be 60 to 62,000 seats, another 5,000 capacity standing room only party deck, and then 80% of the seats are more covered for the fans. So we're gonna have a lot more square footage, so bigger seats, roomier, bigger concourses and space, all the modern amenities, lots of big visuals and jumbotrons and everything like that. So the timeline's 2026, so we still got another 5 seasons of time, or 4+ seasons.
A couple Super Bowls,
a couple Super Bowls in there, a couple parades. You should be fine. And it's just something that I think is exciting for fans to know the finality of it. And I know that we've both said regularly that it's not the best use of public money, but there's probably also things you could waste public money on that we could get more upset about. But I'm happy to have it behind us.
Yeah, the money side, going into it, I was super vocal for years on this, but now that it was going this way anyway, like, what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna sit here and get mad about it after the fact. It's one of these things. It is what it is. Unfortunately, it's part of doing business in the
The
NFL and having an
principle
NFL
that
franchise.
rich people should pay for their own stadiums is
Yes.
100% valid. The
Yes.
reality of thinking that was going to happen probably wasn't a good use of time.
Correct. And I'll stand on that principle every time stadiums come up, that these billionaires should pay for their own entertainment, even though we enjoy it. But that is not the reality. If we want a team here, the New York State's going to have to pitch in for that. And like you said, New York State has no shortage on ways to waste money. So, I think everyone was excited to hear that the Bills were here. So I think, it's a win for politicians. It's a win for the local governments. It's a win for the NFL. So everybody's happy in that regard. I'm excited that they're keeping it at the location. I know there was a lot of people that wanted the stadium downtown. They wanted a dome. They wanted a multi-use facility. When you get into that conversation of public funds and return on investment, none of those things actually end up making sense. I know it sounds good. Like it sounds like a great theory. We'll get all these big conventions and everyone will come to Buffalo. It'll be great. It'll spur the economy. There's no economic evidence that shows that any of that's true. So keep it in Orchard Park. You already have a campus in place.
The health and wellness facilities.
Yep, the wellness facilities are already there. You already have your all the fields that they purchased during the Rex Ryan eras. They bought additional field space across the street there, so they have all that to continue to build on. And people here will talk about how like the traffic's not great, but I urge you to go to other stadiums and other venues and deal with getting in and out of traffic of other facilities or downtown facilities.
Another Great Lake Stadium that the idea was to put it down on the water to be part of downtown. Try leaving a Browns game. I took my wife to the one Browns game last year when the Bills were on bye that week, and it was a nightmare. It took us forever to get home. It was terrible.
Yeah, my wife and I we're originally from New England, so I would go to the Patriots Bills game every single year because it was only a 2.5 hour drive for me to get there. But you would be stuck in traffic for 3 to 4 hours because there's only one way in and out of that stadium. And that's more set up like Orchard Park, where it's outside of the city 20, 30 minutes on a good day. But on a football Sunday, you're not getting out of there when you leave. And so I think, again, the infrastructure was already set up. It's already in place down in Orchard Park. It's not that far for people either. Like if your complaint is it needs to be in the city to draw attention, like if you're coming to Buffalo for a football game for the weekend, you can get anywhere here in Buffalo within 15 minutes. Like when I met you, came here, we were in the South Towns and we drove up to the North Towns. It was like 15 minutes. Like you can get everywhere. So that argument's out the window. I'm glad it's going to stay in Orchard Park. I'm glad they're going to be able to have that facility in place. And then I'm interested to see some of the conversations of what they're going to do with the old footprint of the stadium. Like that seems to be still up in the air as to what that's going to become.
So I thought the same thing, and I saw a couple comments on that, but I also saw some comments. Tim Graham confirmed that destruction costs were part of the project. So I've heard other people like Racua was very careful to not say what they plan to do with it. So I don't know if destruction just means
they might just bring those like top columns down or something,
or we don't know what we're going to do with that space. It's not just going to be leveled for a parking lot. It might be something else.
Become the new field house.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Maybe there's something else they would do with it. But and ultimately, I think out of I know Scott in the chat was asking. I've got a lot of comments on this jacket.
Yeah,
I like it. It's been nice.
I like it. I thought it was a leather coat at first, and I was a little disappointed that you were showing up to the show in like a full leather coat.
It's kind of like a satin type.
But yeah, no, I get it now.
Almost like the old school starter jacket. I like it.
I do.
The one thing I will say for anybody who I think rightfully agrees with you about the public funds and everything, I will say, ask the people in St. Louis or San Diego or Cleveland 25 years ago if they wish they had a bad investment to overpay on. They probably would have. So it's simply the cost of doing business and keeping the team here.
Not to get into the weeds on this, pretty sure St. Louis put up the money and it
didn't
lost.
Yeah, they still lost the team. Yeah, they put up a bunch of money and lost the team. So yeah, could be worse. So, anyways, we're ecstatic to have there. I can't wait to see the new stadium. I've loved it. I've gotten to go to the new Atlanta stadium. I've gotten to go to the new Carolina stadium. I've gotten to go to several of the newer facilities. The Brown Stadium was when it was new. I went there and it's still not old. I've seen a lot of them. It's nice. The amenities. When you go to the restroom or go get a drink, you can still see the game all the time. You don't ever lose vision of it because there's monitors everywhere.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing I think is going to be really nice. Way bigger concourses, easier to get in and out, way more food vendors, way more space for everyone.
Troughs.
Yeah, actual bathrooms.
Yeah, people love that stuff, but honestly,
experience.
like I think there's like a bit of nostalgia to the Bill stadiums, but like those bathrooms all the way at the top in the 300s, they're absurdly disgusting. Like if you look closely, one game, it was so hot. It was the Chargers game opening day a few years ago. It was Josh Allen's first snaps. Peterman got the start, was terrible. Allen goes in. It was so hot that we had to spend a ton of time in the concourse, and you could just see like concrete cracking all over the place. Like the place is old; it's in shambles.
That comment came up about, is it going to make it 5 more
for 5 years?
During the construction.
Yeah, they were talking like possibly continued investments until they have to
money.
Patchwork.
I think 4 seasons. They're hoping to kick off for the 2026
Correct.
season. So we need to make it 4 seasons.
Yes,
and I know it's not a sure thing that it's going to make it 4
the building's not in great shape, guys. And so any of all these new amenities you're talking about are great. But I think maybe my favorite of the new amenities that we saw listed in this is real grass. I hate that turf. Like it's nice and comfortable if you walk down on the turf down there. It's like for turf, it's really good.
Correct.
Quality.
Yeah. The natural, whatever they call it, but that field turf is the best turf you can get. It's not as giving as regular natural grass.
No. And Sean McDermott has made a point of this his entire time since he got here in Buffalo. Like at training camp, they do not practice on the nice field at St. John Fisher. They practice on the far field, which is all grass. They send kickers over to the AstroTurf field. As much as he can, he practices outdoors. And people ask why, and he doesn't want to practice in the field house on the turf because it does lead to more injuries. You see it over and over again. Studies have come out about guys playing on turf. Absolutely. And so I love this idea of them playing on natural grass all the time. I think that's the best amenity we've seen listed.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kind of switch gears, now we get into some of the news, and we'll start right out with the biggest one. Rick Bates is back. He was at risk of returning back into Ryan Bates because if he went to the Bears, he was going to be back to Ryan Bates. But since the Bills matched the deal, Rick Bates is back. This was, a lot of anxiety. We were even talking pre-show. I think a lot of fans had already almost reserved themselves to the fact that he was going to be gone and that they were already planning on which draft pick we needed or which other veteran free agent we needed to pursue. And then with the delay, I guess I had built it up in my head that it had to be kind of an ugly offer because Ryan Poles is no dummy. Like he had to have put together a trip for everything. Oh, Chucky, okay, that's awesome, man. Yeah, make sure to check them out. They'd be able to get you up here. Check out bookseats.com. The idea that we were going to be able to match it was getting tough because I just assumed it was going to be a nasty, some kind, not poison pill. You can't do that anymore, but like some ugly front loaded deal. So then when they matched it, I was like, oh man, I wonder how bad this is. When the details started to come out, 4 years for $17 million, $4 million and change a year, it averages 4.25 and maybe 4.4 in the first 2 years. And the first 2 years are guaranteed. It's really nice. Like it's not a huge expenditure. It's John Feliciano money. We're paying him John Feliciano money. That's perfectly fine. So if we end up taking some stud guard in the draft that beats him out, God bless him. We now have a guy that's a valuable, versatile backup at all 5 spots. And if he's going to get the first shot to start at right guard or maybe left guard, we'll see. I think it's really interesting. So what were your thoughts in that kind of roller coaster of last Thursday finding out about the deal versus until Monday afternoon when it came out that we matched?
So my level of anxiety was probably not as high as some. I'm torn on Bates because I like him. I think that he was better than John Feliciano at that guard position. He did help secure that line for that final 5-game stretch. And we talked about this a little bit offline too, that this idea that people were getting to the point where, you could just draft his replacement. And your point is those pro scouts, when you have at least 5 games, it's so much more valuable than no games, right? Like,
projecting a draft prospect versus having 6 games of actual starting film is a light years.
More
so
valuable. Even though we're not sure if that small sample size is who he is going forward, you at least know the level that he can perform to in the NFL, and that you've seen it at an NFL level against NFL defenders. So that's good. All the little bit of anxiety that it did have, totally relieved when they matched, obviously. But then, like you said, when you see that contract, it shows me, one, it's good for Bears fans that their GM's not totally crazy and wasn't reckless in trying to get
$10 million in the first year or something nuts.
Yeah. But I think what it did was set who is this player for us and who is he viewed as league wide, right? Like, and them only matching it or only offering him that as, hey, you're maybe an above average rotational interior offensive lineman.
And that it's the best offer amongst 4 teams.
Correct.
So discussions with the Bills, visits with the Patriots, visits with the Vikings, visits with the Bears.
And this is the best he got.
The best offer was 4 years, $17 million.
Correct. And this is similar to a conversation that we have about Isaiah McKenzie, right? Like that he comes back, like I'm guaranteeing you he had conversations with other teams. And when he came back, that's what this player's market value is. And this is what the league, not fans, think of this player. And so I think our expectations of Bates maybe needs to come down a little bit as a fan base, in that it's okay. He's okay. He's fine. He's maybe above average.
It's a projection if he's going to be better.
Correct.
It's a projection. We don't know that for sure.
Right.
Now, I will say when there's only 6 games, there might be some upside left in there that we don't know. Maybe he will improve.
There was moments in those games that he played above that value.
Correct.
Absolutely. He played above that value at times. I don't know if he can stretch that out consistently or if he's slightly above John Feliciano, which is great for the Bills right now. We don't need the Bills offensive line.
What
to be
did
the best
you used to say about Feliciano or Boettger?
Right.
It's all about who that 5th guy is. So if that 5th guy is now Bates, and that even that is a slight level upgrade above what we had from Feliciano and Boettger, and is our man Ron here in the chat is saying he is only 25. Like there's still some room, and he really has only started 6 games in his career. There's potential it could be higher. The floor we don't really know about, but there's potential that it could be higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I'm excited in the sense that I do think the offensive line has improved from where we saw it mid to early season last year, just in addition by subtraction in getting rid of some guys. And then you get Saffold and you get Bates back here. I think that there is an improvement, but let's not kid ourselves of where this offensive line was. Even in that stretch where they got better in those 5 games, like this still wasn't an elite offensive line. We're talking about maybe above average overall offensive line, which is when you have a Josh Allen, really that's all you're trying to get to, is like, just don't get this guy killed, right? Like have enough offensive line to get a little bit of a run game going at times, and then let Josh Allen cook, right? That's all we're trying to do.
One more topic on the contract. I don't want to go to one of the questions in the chat here.
Yeah.
So the upside downside for the contract is we're locked in at 2 years, $8.8 million. We're paying him $4.4 million each of the next 2 years. The good part is, and the favor that Ryan Poles did us is, with the 4-year term, the Bills have no obligations in the 3rd or 4th year. They could cut bait and move on and be totally fine. Or if he pans out, we have a good starting caliber guard for $4.1 million each of those 2 years in high cap years.
You won't get that 4th year if he's good.
Correct. He would have another extension at that point, because it would be a 28-year-old guard.
Yeah, he'll get that. He'll finally
that would be fantastic, and then would get a really good one.
Right.
But you would still get that term here.
Right.
With that in mind, the fact that it's 4 years and they match there, Jessica's question here: does Bates play left or right? And I'll preface this by saying we all heard in the press conference, Roger Saffold, when he was signed, was given the impression that he was going to be between Morris and Dawkins, meaning on the left side, which has been most of his career. He has played 2 seasons at right guard, so one of them under Aaron Cromer, who's our new offensive line coach.
And said he could play both.
Correct. And so Bates has played both, and Saffold has played both. I think both of them prefer left guard. What would you do knowing that Saffold's a 1-year deal, Bates is a 4-year deal, and Dawkins and Bates played pretty well together last year? A piece of me wouldn't mind seeing the veteran guard next to Spencer Brown.
I get both sides. I would sit down in a room with these guys and hash it out for real. Be like, look, the vet gets the say going into training camp. If you really want to be slotted in at left, we're going to give that to you. But throughout training camp, we're going to rotate this and switch it up a little bit and to see where it fits. Training camp's the time to do that anyway, and get those feelers out.
It's really the only moving part on the offensive line.
It'd be the only moving part. But I think it's a situation where you could roll this year with Saffold at left if that's what he preferred and he felt comfortable and Cromer feels comfortable with him there. I don't know. And then you could still move Bates. Like, I don't think the transition from him playing 1 year at right guard and then when Saffold's out of here, then move into left and then you move whatever rookie in or Boettger
or whatever.
Yeah, whatever in over at right.
Extend Saffold to come back to defend the Super Bowl championship.
Sure, one more run it back, if you will. So I honestly, that would be a conversation that day one when I get them in at OTAs is, hey, we're all grown adults here. Let's talk about this. We know everybody wants to be between Morris and Dawkins, but we got this stud over here on the right side, freak athlete who wants to line up and be his partner.
Yeah, so I think my guess is Saffold on the left and Bates on the right, but I won't lie. When it was matching the 4-year term, a piece of me wondered, be like, well, is it better long term to just let them slot in and start playing together right from the beginning? And Saffold's the 1-year guy, and he has played before, so we'll see how that plays out. But that is a little bit of intrigue there on that side. And as actually Jessica brings up here, I can't lie, Saffold and Spencer Brown run blocking on the right side would be some mayhem. They'd be able to road grade a fair amount of guys. Our next topic that comes up here is actually happened first, was the signing of Ike Boettger. So there was a fun, literally an hour on Monday afternoon where the Bills re-signed Ike Boettger. And I would say 80% of my timeline was, well, I guess we're
not.
There goes Bates. There goes Bates. I guess we're not. And I just kept running back to say, hey, maybe, but
they were never. Yeah, no,
it doesn't. One doesn't have anything to do with it. I wrote over and over again. I don't think they're connected. I don't think it's connected. I don't like. It's whatever the odds were of matching Ryan Bates before Ike Boettger signing and after. It's still the same. I don't think it impacted the other one. And then lo and behold, an hour later they did match. So I actually think that's the best of both worlds. We know Boettger is like that baseline replacement level starter. Like he's not negative. Like he's legitimately the lowest level fifth starter guy, but he is a starting caliber guy. And we now have that as someone probably still recovering, and going through his Achilles recovery. That's a timeline that could be kind of iffy. There's a chance he's back right for the beginning of the season, but it's also very possible he starts the season on PUP and we get him back as the year goes. But you're adding a starting caliber interior guy. We signed Greg Mance already, who is also a starting caliber interior guy. So we now have 5 guys on the interior of this line with starting experience, 2 of which are just backups to be able to be there. So in that window, I was a little nervous that it was going to be Greg Mance versus Ike Boettger and a 4th round pick for the starting guard spot. But then when you added in Bates, now just having those 2 as a luxury that Greg Mance and Ike Boettger are backups, I was really happy about it. I think Boettger is the kind of guy you want to bring back. I'll be honest, I kind of hope they do the same thing with Justin Zimmer. Yeah. Bring him back, let him start the season on PUP, and then if somebody goes down, you have a guy that comes in that is roster caliber.
Yeah. But Zimmer might be tough just from a numbers standpoint, the interior defensive line, but I agree with the philosophy. 6 defensive linemen already.
Right.
And maybe the draft will fall. So the guy. I don't know. But I don't disagree with the philosophy. And Boettger, that was my thing. As soon as that news came out, Boettger was, to me, because of the injury, always the idea that, okay, just bring him back super cheap, let him heal up, and then maybe you get him in the second half of the season. Maybe you don't even see him this year, depending on how the recovery from that injury goes. We don't know. But I think you get him back for a playoff run halfway through the season, something like that. That's a great addition to this team. I actually liked the way Ike Boettger was playing before Bates came in and took over that job. I thought he was doing a pretty decent job. Obviously, Bates took that offensive line to a different level, but I liked the way Boettger was playing for a little while. So as a rotational interior offensive lineman, I think it's hard to beat, like you said, if you look league wide of guys that have had some playing experience that fit in this offense. So I'm excited to have him back. I hope that his recovery goes well. He's going to be in there with Trey recovering here for the first maybe half of the year. I don't know.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, they got a couple rehab buddies in there, and maybe you throw Zimmer in there too, like you said, and just get some quality depth back on this team. Like you said, just in case an injury pops up late in the year, you have a guy with starting experience with the guys on this offensive line. That's not a bad thing at all.
So Steve Lynn here asking a good question about, isn't a ruptured Achilles tendon kind of a kiss of death? It used to be, for sure. It was, for me, the scariest one. Like when you had an Achilles, nobody came back from that. It ended Dominique Wilkins' career. Like some of the most dynamic athletes ever, you just did not come back from it. It's still very scary, but they're much better at fixing it now. So guys have a legitimate chance to come all the way back. No better example than last year. Cam Akers ruptured his Achilles in preseason and played in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. Like he was back the same season and looked explosive and fast. And now that's not the norm. I'm not saying and I'm not saying Ike Boettger is the same athlete that Cam Akers is and the same healing and all the same timeline, but
we're seeing more guys coming back.
Yeah, correct. It is much more doable now.
Sidney Jones tore his Achilles in the combine, and it's taken him a few years as a prospect to come back, but he was a guy that we all wanted this offseason. Kyle Williams tore his Achilles and then came back and had continued to play great towards the end of his career. So there's a bunch of examples of it working out. It is probably still one of those scarier things. Like ACLs nowadays, nobody really cares.
Everyone comes back from an ACL now.
12 years ago, 15 years ago, that was it. That player was probably a wrap. It's never going to be the same, especially running backs and athletic guys like a Trey White. Now it's okay. Well, you have to wait the X amount of time for recovery, but once he's back within a year, we're going to get the same player back.
Yeah. Guys have virtually 100% recovery rate, which is crazy.
Not this year. Trey White. I'm not saying Trey White will be 100% this year, but within a year after that surgery or with a 2-year window after the full recovery, you'll be back to who you were.
Yeah. So one more topic here before we go into our main topic for the show tonight. That's the veteran cornerback market. So obviously we spent a fair amount of time last week talking about James Bradbury and whether there was a trade potential. Tonight, for anybody who wasn't watching, Patrick Peterson broke the news of his signing on his own podcast live on YouTube. So
it takes a lot of ego. I would do it too if I was,
sure.
But like, does anyone really care that much? I don't know. Maybe Twitter got excited about it for a minute.
You want to know, it's kind of that third wave of free agency now where anybody makes a little bit of news. So now Patrick Peterson isn't the important part of the story. His contract is. So obviously he said on the show he was considering the Bills as one of the teams. The contract he took from the Vikings was like 4 years in total money, but it $4 million in total money for a 1-year deal. But it was like a $1.5 million base salary and a $2 million signing bonus with void years and like a $500,000 incentive that could turn it into $4 million. And I have a feeling that's the kind of thing that Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane are dangling with Joe Hayden. They obviously offered something relatively similar to that, probably a little cheaper, to Patrick Peterson. They're probably offering that to Steven Nelson. They're probably offering that to Joe Hayden. They're probably offering that to Bryce Callahan. And they're just waiting to see, hey, which one of you guys wants this? We're going to offer it to one of you guys. I'm curious where that goes. And there's still a couple other names floating out there in that market. I know you're probably past the point of anybody you're happy about. Who's maybe one of the guys left that you'd be least grossed out by?
Yeah, it's not even so much grossed out. I think like a guy like Peterson, my problem is sort of to Daryl made the comment here, Daryl Fletcher, that he's a little bit cooked. Like he's not the same guy. I think his name,
you need to pair it with the draft pick.
Yeah, his name carries maybe more weight than is left in the player. And somebody in my Twitter mentions, I said it brought up, well, he's the same age as Micah Hyde or around the same age as Micah Hyde, which is he's a year older, but he's got 2 years of NFL football where Micah doesn't, and he started his career as a starter, like where Micah and Jordan Poyer took some time. So the NFL mileage is a little bit different, and safeties age gracefully in comparison to corners. So it's not the same type of thing when you're just looking at ages. Hayden feels the same to me as Peterson. So again,
I think he's even like a slight notch below Peterson.
Probably, right?
Because Peterson was a more elite athlete to start with, so the degradation is maybe he's hold on to a little bit more, and he's bigger.
Yeah. So I think he's the same. I think AJ Bouye is sort of in that, like where like time is just not good to you. Jimmy Smith is probably kind of in that same ballpark. Guys that I like a little bit more that I think have maybe not upside, but can still play at a level where their name recognition
maybe a Levi Wallace level.
Yeah, right. Honestly, maintain that floor. But I think, well, like Bryce Callahan, I think would be an upgrade.
Yeah,
correct.
Levi
Wallace. I think he can still play at the level that his name carries, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Steven Nelson's a weird one to me, dude, because he is a guy that last free agency, there was this idea that he was looking for some more money than he was going to get. And he was sitting at this time at last year, and everyone was like shocked because he didn't get the money that he expected. And now here we are again.
Yeah. And he was actually okay in Philadelphia. Like he was solid. It wasn't
right.
great, but he was solid in Philadelphia. Yeah. Like he wasn't terrible. So I am kind of curious. I think he just vastly overestimates his value.
Yeah. So that would be a guy, a Nelson, a Callahan.
Nelson or Callahan would be really two that I would feel better, but I don't really want Janoris Jenkins.
I don't know if Janoris. There's like still a part of me, and it might be just the fans stuck on the idea a few years ago I wanted to get Jason Verrett, that maybe if you can get him in here in those health and wellness facilities, can rid him of the injuries that he's had to deal with, that maybe you can still get some juice out of a player like that. But I mean, this is where the Bills are looking. I mean, maybe you take a waiver on a Kevin King that you can get him to pan out with that athleticism, but he's
Robert Alford, the same thing. Maybe Robert Alford
bad too. Yeah. Like these are guys that we like in draft processes and things like that, but careers haven't either panned out or they're on the wrong side of their career. So a Callahan would be nice. I do think it's weird to me. We said it in our group DM chat when we were talking about these values, and that this is the value that maybe Beane is set for the rest of this market. And it's weird to me because Callahan probably should get more than Patrick Peterson did, but he's still sitting there for a reason, right? Like he hasn't gotten that value. So maybe if that market continues to dry up,
the only one out there
Gilmore,
that I think, the only one who's going to get more money is Gilmore. Everybody else, like, you kind of lost musical chairs here. You're going to have to take what's left and do like what Steven Nelson ended up doing last year. And that was 1 year, $2.5 million. So at some point you lose the game of musical chairs and the money's left what it is. So let me get my pitch real quick for Bryce Callahan and people asking about like, oh, what is he? So 2 years ago, he played outside corner for Denver and played really well. Last year, he played nickel cornerback for Denver and played pretty well. He was actually better outside than he was in the nickel. So he's one of those guys who's kind of rare that he's not the biggest guy, but he has decent length and it translates well to the outside. So I like him in the combination of, I still want a premium draft pick. I want one of the first 3 rounds to still be a cornerback, but then you have great insurance in 3 different spots because you have insurance for the rookie. You have insurance for if Trey White's not ready to come back day one. You have legitimate insurance for Taron Johnson where we're not banking on Saran Neal or Cam Lewis to start in a playoff game. You have an actual starting caliber nickel corner, and you have a day one starter for until the rookie's ready to beat him out. I love his versatility to fit into all those spots, that he can do all those different things. And he's a really nice jack of all trades that can fit in at any of the spots we need. So I really hope they find a way to get a guy like him. If we go with an Alford or a Steven Nelson, I think they're fine. And I think that they would push Dane Jackson, and I think Nelson might beat him out, but Dane Jackson might beat him out. I don't know. I don't think it's a guarantee. Callahan's the only one, obviously not assuming we don't get Stephon Gilmore, because I don't think that's happening. Right. Callahan's the only one that would come in and be like, oh man, great. We got Bryce Callahan. We're really set now. Let's not worry about it.
Yeah, Callahan would be a guy that, again, gets that. This was my thing with Levi Wallace all these years, was I'm comfortable at that floor. Right. Like you get a guy like that in, it's not going to be, you're not going to have the best cornerback duo in the league, but you have a good, solid cornerback. He's cornerback 2 amongst his peers. He's right there. And Dane Jackson, I don't feel that type of comfort in the floor. He's had some good moments. He had some bad moments. I don't know that he can be at the Levi Wallace level for an entire season as cornerback 2. Right now, cornerback 1 going into the season. I don't like that at all.
Would Nelson give you that floor?
Maybe. I'm not sure. Maybe. I think it's a slight below that floor. And one of the, like, Pittsburgh could have brought him back. Yeah. Nelson this year, and they chose to go with
Pittsburgh. Chose Levi Wallace.
Yeah. And same with Joe Hayden, right? Like, I don't know that the floor is there. Maybe it's a little less, and you could still be comfortable with a little less of the floor. But I think Callahan gives you at least that Levi Wallace floor, and maybe a tick above, right? Like, he's at least played a tick above that at points in his career. So maybe you can unlock that and continue to get that kind of production out of him. But sort of to that Levi Wallace point, while we're talking this, without knowing the relationships with the Bills and Levi and whose decision it was, or if there was even an offer made, or if both sides just agreed they weren't coming back. With the way that this cornerback market's gone and what Levi got, there's a little bit of me and that's kind of bummed that we just didn't get the band back together and then draft a guy, get Levi back in here. Know that was our floor rolling into the year. Top defense in the league in so many categories. Really good secondary in terms of explosive plays against them, included Levi Wallace. And he goes on for a deal that you could have probably brought him back on here. And that's tough for me because now we're sitting at this cornerback market talking about like, oh, well, maybe we can get Bryce Callahan. He can be the player he was, or maybe we can get Joe Hayden and just patch it together until we maybe get a rookie. We don't know how the board's going to fall. We don't know what's going to happen in this draft. How are you feeling about Levi? I mean, all these years of me pounding the table for the guy, I feel now that I might be missing him a little.
Yeah, it's a it's a tough call to be able to make, and I was fine moving on from him just because I think it's a known ceiling and known quantity. And I know there's a couple questions here. Silas asking about anyone who doesn't want Stephon Gilmore because of his comments about leaving and him pouting and stuff like that. That ain't why. We're not going to get him because I think he's still going to get like $10 million from somebody to play. So I don't think it's going to be. Yeah, he's still a good player. I would welcome him back immediately. Yeah. Wallace, I was fine moving on. And I still am because I think James Bradbury is still going to get moved, and I don't know.
I heard this. Did not see anything confirming, but I heard the Chiefs were in on.
Yes, which is interesting that got leaked and seems like something that the Giants would leak to get other teams to step up
their interest.
Yeah. So I'll maybe it is, but most of the stuff doesn't leak like that beforehand. They just announce it that it happened. It normally doesn't leak like that beforehand, but
sure,
he's the one that would also be a step up from even Bryce Callahan, where he's a legitimate, like Bradbury is a legit real starter that's not quite on Trey's level, but actually had a season on Trey's level.
He's played at Trey's level.
His 2020 year was an all-pro season.
Yeah.
But beyond that, that's where it is. We'll keep an eye on. It's the one remaining spot out there. We've now solidified every other spot on the entire roster other than cornerback 2. So we'll see where that goes if we get one there. And that leads us into tonight's discussion, which is with Brandon Beane's ridiculous spending spree. I know we spend a lot of time talking about, guys like Zion Johnson and, all the different, guard and tackles who can move to guards. We spend a lot of time looking at slot receivers. Well, they brought back McKenzie and added Jamison Crowder. We talked a lot about, hey, what do we need to add at edge? Well, they added Von Miller and Shaq Lawson. Well, we probably need a D tackle next to Ed Oliver. Well, they add Tim Settle and Daquan Jones and Jordan Phillips. It's made it interesting of what is our priority of the remaining draft needs. And I'll let you lead us off and what you think they need to approach and where you kind of tier it between the groups.
Yeah. Punter.
Honestly, it's on the list. It's
still on the list, right? Yeah. No, I think so. First of all, I want to say my draft approach is I'm not a guy that drafts for need, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into how I view how the draft should go. But if we're just talking about what are the remaining priorities on this team, cornerback's the most glaring. We just had this conversation in the previous segment. They didn't bring in a corner in free agency. They haven't addressed it yet. Even if they do address it to this point, none of those guys prevent you from drafting a corner. And so that's still your remaining biggest need. And you got to find a long-term answer at cornerback too. And who knows with Trey White long-term, like you might have to find his replacement here down the road at some point, where a guy that can turn into a cornerback 1, we don't know. And so that's priority need. I don't know if that means absolutely Brandon Beane's taking a cornerback round 1, or if he's going to trade up for a corner. I don't know. Any of that's on the table, possibly, but that's the number 1 need coming into this. Running back is still a sneaky need. They were in on McKissick. They ended up with Duke Johnson. We talked about how that wasn't a huge difference, although it felt like it. I still think they want a little more there. Zach Moss is the only running back that's going to be under contract going into next year. That doesn't make me feel great. I don't want to give Devin Singletary a big contract to stay here and be a running back. I'd rather just let him go somewhere else and bring a rookie in. So that's another need. I think wide receiver still. a sneaky need. Jamison Crowder is a 1-year guy. He's only here for
McKenzie get out of with like 200,000 in dead cap.
I hate to say it, McKenzie might not even be a roster lock this year. Like I think there's a chance that contract isn't secure that he's here, especially if you get a really good rookie. If the draft falls to you in the right way, and say a Chris Olave is sitting there, then you have Crowder. Like there's going to be an odd man out. And you don't have long-term ties to McKenzie. I think interior offensive lineman still very much on the table. We just talked about that. Deal. Yeah, Saffold's a 1-year deal. Rick Bates doesn't prevent you from getting a guy that's better than him to come in and start. That's still on the table. I think a lot of people I've talked to think linebacker because of Tremaine Edmonds. I'm not there yet. I don't know if that's on your list. I'm not at linebacker yet, but all those other ones I think are still your top priorities. And even the idea of drafting a punter's on the board.
Yeah, I have a couple different tiers. I have cornerbacks kind of in a tier of its own from a need standpoint, but need just means in my mind, we have to have a guy in one of those day 1, day 2 scenarios. Like if the guy that they like ends up being a 3rd round pick, that happens all the time. James Bradbury was a 2nd round pick. Like guys step in and start from those spots and can compete with a veteran. Say we got a Hayden or a Nelson or something like that. A 3rd round pick can work his way into starting into that spot. That's fine. I would prefer that it's a premium guy. Taron Johnson was a 4th round pick.
Right.
So that's certainly capable. And he started pretty much from day 1 as he came in at nickel. So that one's in a tier by itself from a need standpoint, but that only locks in that I want to see it for 2nd, 3rd round. Top 100 pick, premium pick, day 1, day 2. I want a cornerback in one of those spots. Then I have a group of 3 positions that I'd like to be one of the other ones, but I'll live if it's not. And that's wide receiver, interior line, and I'm okay with a center guard combo. I'm assuming we can Eric Wood somebody that they could start at guard and move to center when Morris is ready. Yeah, guys that can play both. And then running back. Those are the 3 that are in kind of my 2nd tier. Still a priority. I'd love for them to be one of those first couple picks, but I've listed 4 spots and there's only 3 premium picks, so one of them won't be, and I'd be fine whichever one doesn't. I know it's fun to talk about wide receivers. I do think that the same idea, the way you talked about Moss, Diggs and Davis are really the only ones who are under contract beyond this year. I technically Marcus Stevenson is, but I won't even count that.
Sure.
So we don't have a lot beyond there. So we need a wide receiver, but if it's a 4th round pick, I'll probably live if it is. Same idea. If they pick
some of the stuff you can patch together, like Beane has done.
Oh yeah,
1-year contracts. You're not going to fill it all.
Yeah. For anybody, I played around earlier today. Just next year, only Josh Allen and Von Miller. If they do the restructures for those 2, it's $32 million in cap space. Mm-hmm. So they'll be fine. As they go through there, I have those groups. Out of those, my preference would probably be that we take the developmental guard in the 4th round, because that gives you a year to build them up behind a Saffold in there. And I'd prefer that it's cornerback, wide receiver in the first 2 rounds, best running back available in the 3rd round. Maybe if one of those top 3 running backs make it to the 2nd round, that would make sense to me. But that's the groups there. Then after that group, that 2nd tier with 3, then I get into, if a good linebacker is there that competes on special teams and can beat out the Markel Lees and Tyrell Dodsons of the world and can develop into more, great. Is there a safety that could push Jaquan Johnson or DeMar Hamlin for a roster spot? Great. I'd love a punter to be able to beat out Matt Hawk in that group. That would be lovely.
I got a sneaky one I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
That so our friend Pat Moran and I have been doing some mock draft episodes. We did it last year. We're doing it again, and we came into, I think it might have been round 3. We came into, and there was a slew of tight ends available in round 3, and guys I liked, Likely, Ruckert, guys that I really like, would love to get in this building. And sort of to the same point that we just talked about with Crowder and Saffold, you've got OJ Howard on a 1-year deal. And the thing with this is either he hits the potential that everybody thought he had and he's gone and he's counting towards your comp picks next year because the Bills can't afford to bring him back, or he's not very good. And you're still looking for a tight end too. He is the guy that he's sort of been, and he's not good enough to be that tight end too. And maybe that's a sneaky need that they're looking to, hey, you don't need to, because tight end's a slow developing position as well. We saw that with Dawson Knox. We've seen that with OJ Howard.
We've seen it not pan out with Tommy Sweeney.
Absolutely. And so maybe you get another guy in here to, hey, there's no pressure this year. Take your time, learn from Dawson Knox, learn. Rob Boris is a good tight ends coach. There's no pressure on you to play this year.
Can be game day inactive sometimes.
Could be game day inactive all the time. So we've got OJ Howard. We're going to try to make this work, and hopefully his value is good enough where we can play some comp pick bingo next year, then you slide right in. So I think that's another sneaky one that if the board falls the right way and one of those really good tight ends is sitting there, that's a good fit. Might be a guy.
100%. I think that's right there in that group, that next tier of punter, linebacker, safety, tight end. I think those 4 make the most sense. I'd honestly be kind of surprised if we took a tackle. I guess you could, but it'd be really tough for me to fit in a tackle. I'd be really confusing for me if we took another defensive lineman, but Brandon Beane loves them. You never know. There's not roster spots for defensive line or offensive tackle at this point.
It's hard.
I'd be kind of disappointed if they took a quarterback. Like those 3 spots, I just don't see the path to make the roster. So don't waste the draft pick, trade it away for a future pick. Those are the only ones where legitimately, I mean, don't get me wrong. If someone drops, I'm exaggerating, but if Aiden Hutchinson drops, okay, sure, find a way to make that pick. But short of something really weird happening, I just can't see them taking DN, D tackle, offensive tackle, or quarterback, which is great because those are premium positions that other teams want to take those guys and push one of the guys we need at receiver, corner, running back, offensive interior line, push them down to us. That's great. That's a good position to be in, not to need those premium positions. But I'm curious where that goes.
Well, and we can get into this conversation a little bit more in doing mocks, which is just a simulation. Like, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Holding on to all 8 picks is tough to not get into some of those spots. Like I was doing one again with Pat the other night, and I took an interior defensive lineman in the 6th round because he's a guy I like, and he was, in my opinion, the best player sitting on the board. And I was saying to him, like, I can't see a way that this guy cracks the squad, but I also am having a hard time picking him. We've already filled at this point in the draft. We had taken 2 corners. We had taken a bunch of things. Like we had too much. There was too many assets to do anything with, and you were kind of filling up on spots. And so that leads me to believe that while I don't think that you can bank on trades, I don't think you can predict trades in this draft process. Brandon Beane is in a really nice spot in that his roster's quite full and his depth is quite full. There's still some needs, but he probably has more picks than he's going to be able to really utilize and get those guys on the roster. So he might be able to package some of this up. I'm not saying move up in the 1st round, but maybe package those 2 6 to move up in the 4th or something like moving up in mid rounds type of thing. Or like you said, get some future picks in hand for some later years, but it's going to be hard if you keep those 8 picks to not dip into an area that's already full of depth.
Well, here's an area that I think is interesting, almost as a new topic for us. I saw this question for Jake Billings asking about David Ojabo, but he's not the only one. There's a question with Jameson Williams, with David Ojabo, with Damone Clark, the linebacker for LSU. What do you think about the idea, the position that we're in now, 8 draft picks? Say we can't easily trade up, and everybody wants to say, hey, use those day 3 picks to trade up higher into day 2. It's normally not that easy. It is ammo to go from 89 to 80. It is ammo to go from 57 to 50. You can't normally package the day 3 picks and get an extra top 100 pick. It can be ammo to move up and wiggle a little bit. So let's say we do some of that, but we still have 7 picks left or 6 picks left. What do you think about the idea of almost redshirting a guy, picking a guy like Damone Clark, that, hey, he would have been a top day 2 pick. He would have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick at linebacker. Now we can get him in the 5th round with pick 168, and we just stash him for a year and have that be a freebie for next year. Or, hey, for some reason, David Ojabo falls to the 2nd round, and it's a guy that we don't really know what's going to happen with Epinesa or Basham, or, Shaq Lawson's on a 1-year deal, and we get a guy who could have been a top 10, top 15 pick that fell because of the, unfortunate Achilles injury. What do you think about some of those redshirt stashes?
I'm fine with the idea of redshirting someone. I think Williams is probably not even a redshirt. I think
he looks, they showed him skipping today.
Yeah, as much as I would like the idea to get it out there that he's not going to play this year, don't waste your pick on him and let him fall to 25. I think he's going to be all right. I don't hate the idea of where this roster is right now on redshirting if the talent matches, for sure. The linebacker conversation, this is one I'm probably going to get in trouble with because I really actually think that there's a priority in one Bills drive. And I don't know how he's going to make the money work, but he's been doing it this whole time in ways that I don't know how. But I think that Brandon Beane is going to extend Tremaine Edmonds. I think that that's going to be part of the future plan here. I don't think his money is going to be as crazy as people think that it's projected to be. I think it'll be a pretty decent contract, but I think that they do have a idea that they want him to be a part of the future of this team going forward. So that's why for linebacker, for me, I'm sort of haven't even dipped my toes in that. If anything, there might be a scenario where you're drafting late a guy that fits more the Milano role, and the idea that maybe you'll move on from Milano before you move on from Edmonds, that it's maybe potentially easier type of guy to replace.
Or a Medikevich, AJ Klein replacement. Like you still need that third linebacker and that special team stud that, and then, hey, if they develop into a replacement for one of the other guys, awesome.
Great, fantastic. Yeah. But the linebacker one's tough for me, but there's definitely some guys. Ajabu would be one that I would have a hard time if he fell to the second round. I'd have a hard time not redshirting.
Okay, I mean, at 25,
Pat and I were having the conversation. He was at 25 for us in the draft, and I said, "Look, I'm not going to do it for the sake of this mock here, but I'm having that conversation."
Yeah.
He
shouldn't make it to 57. I will be shocked if he does.
Yeah,
he's just too good of a talent.
I'll be shocked if he's there in the first round. Like he shouldn't, even with that injury. Some team should redshirt him.
That fifth year option. He's
Correct.
The exact kind of guy that somebody trades up and takes at 30, 31, 32. Instead, heck, the Chiefs have 2 first-round picks. That's the kind of guy that you draft and stash and just put away for a year and be able to do that route. So one last topic here before we close. It's been a hotly debated topic. It's been all over Bills Mafia all over the place. I know, Anthony Prohaska talked about it earlier tonight on Disguised Coverage. Eric did an awesome breakdown of the film room with the guys that are there. You put up a nice graphic about the comments from Brandon Beane. Where does running back fit for you in the way that you approach it with the draft, with the economics of it, with the draft capital? How do you approach what you'll do with running backs?
First of all, I feel like this is a trap to get hate mail sent my way on Twitter
to get you on the record.
I've already seen some of the comments here. People are going to like what I'm going to say. This conversation about running backs to me is something that is it's a nuanced conversation. What I don't believe you can do is say, I will never take a running back in the first round. I think that that's ridiculous, to be frank. Like, I don't believe that idea should be so rigid that you box yourself into this idea. Now, an idea that I will get on board with that you said earlier in the DMs is I will never take a running back in the top 10 of the first round. Okay. We can agree on this, that I can talk to that. The top 10 is a lot different than picking 25th overall in the NFL draft. I've been at this for a few years now. I'm not a draft guru, but I talk to a lot of draft gurus. We have them on our staff. I talk to guys all over the place. And every year, one of the first questions I ask a lot of these guys is, how many first-round prospects do you have this year? And most years, those conversations are, I got 12 guys. I got 17 guys. I got whatever. It's
maybe 22 in a really heavy year. Maybe 25.
Maybe. It's very rarely over 20 than when I talk to these
normally
guys.
In the high teens.
Yes. And so when you're picking at 25, you're already sort of operating in an area where you're probably picking a second round grade, regardless of what your GM comes out and says on the presser after the draft, when he say, "Oh no, this was our guy. This was our best player available. Yeah, we loved him." Every GM says that. Even up to pick 32, they're saying that was their top guy on their board round 1. That's not always true, right? You're getting some guys that were second round grades in round 1. So you already got to kind of get this idea out of your head that this round 1 is some untouchable asset that can't, and nobody can, the value of it's so significant that you can't do anything with it. There's teams out there right now that, not that the Rams are the poster child for what a team should do, but there's a bunch of teams that will trade round 1 picks that get out of round 1. Like, it's not this valuable asset that you can't touch or do anything special with. And so when you're picking at 25, it really becomes a best player available. And in these scenarios, depending how mocks fall, again, this is part of the problem. If you go off the Draft Network's mocks, the way they have running backs ranked right now, you're getting a lot in that second round, right? Where the Bills pick in the second round, all 3 are still available. I don't know if that's the NFL's big boards or not. I don't know what Brandon Beane's
running backs have been very common to go early second, between and even late first. We've seen plenty of those between 30 and 50 is where a ton of the premium. If you look back at Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, like over and over and over again, the most of Javonte Williams, all those guys are in that spot, and that's where a lot of them have gone.
Well, and because the Bills are picking in that 25th spot, when they get to the second round, they're going to be at the end of the second round again. So if you were willing to take a guy, say, early second round, then you should be willing to take him at the 25th pick. And you get that 5th year. And people say, well, that 5th year option is too valuable. Well, you can ride a running back for 5 years and then dump him. Thank you. Bye. Thanks for your services. We're going to run you.
Should have done with Nick Chubb.
Absolutely. Run you to the wheels fall off, and then we'll do this again. We'll draft another guy in 5 years. I do think the position is more valuable than people think in terms of what it provides to an offense, especially with the way teams are trying to play the Buffalo Bills right now with that too high safety shell, daring you to run at them. Even with Devin Singletary and his production late in the year, teams were still daring the Bills to run. They weren't scared. Let Devin Singletary beat us. We don't care. We don't want Josh Allen to beat us. And how you take some of that load off Josh Allen in the run game, which we know the Bills would like to do, is get a running back that can handle that type of load. And so I'm all for it. Now, this doesn't mean that I want to draft a running back round one. I'm not sitting here coming to pound the table that we need to take Hall round one. I'm not sure. In most scenarios that I come to, he's not the best player available for me in round one in any of the mocks I'm doing. But again, these mocks, big boards, I don't know. They could be total crap. All these guys could be gone before the Bills are picking. We don't know how that's going to shake out. If there's a scenario where Hall or even Walker, for me, are guys that are the best player available, and I think they're right there, late round one, early round two, there's absolutely a conversation being had about that. Do you take the top 2 running backs available or the 6th cornerback available? I don't know. That's a conversation that Brandon Beane has to have, but I'm not against it. I think too many people are too strict in this idea that you cannot do it, and that drives me absolutely insane.
So, I'll say, and you and I both listen to many of our other comrades. We listen to Joe Marino's show. We listen to Bruce Nolan's show. Both of them listen to our show. That we go back and forth all the time.
We've had many DMs with our friend Bruce about this topic. We talk about it all the time. Yeah.
So I have some rigidity at the high end. I mentioned earlier, I would not take a running back in the top 10 under any circumstance. I just don't think in today's NFL it's possible for that to net out from a contract standpoint. When you have a guy, and I'll reference the comment that Joe Marino brought up, the fact that you have Gregory Rousseau as the 90th highest paid defensive end is really nice. That's really, really nice. That's awesome value. If you hit on a late first round anything, you're going to get value because those guys, everybody gets paid more than that. So it's going to turn out. The difference is how much value. If you hit on a late round, first round cornerback or defensive end or offensive tackle, you're making between like $15 to $18 million in value because they're $15 to $20 million players that you're paying $2 million to be able to play.
Right.
A running back is still value. It's still better. Like good running backs still get $8 to $10 million. Alvin Kamara just signed a pretty significant extension. He's an awesome player. Aaron Jones, all the best with Joe Mixon, all the guys, Dalvin Cook, all the guys we mentioned are still getting paid. Nick Chubb, they're awesome players. They got those extensions. I don't want to pay second contracts to running backs ever, but it is a value. So when you're getting that, there is a value there. The challenge is it's $6 to $8 million in value instead of 15 to 18 million. What people confuse between those two is they take that as, oh, you have to only ever take those players, which means you could end up reaching for a cornerback or a defensive end or an offensive tackle or a premium position, and you never take X, whatever that position might be. And we'll use running back in this scenario. There are scenarios where it is just so clear that he's the best player that you can take them. Now, I would prefer that you would use that leverage to trade down, have somebody trade up for one of those premium positions and trade down to pick up some extra assets. But you brought that up many times. It's a lot easier to say I'm going to trade down than it is to find a trade partner and to be able to go and do that. So I strongly prefer not to take a running back in the first round, but I do think running backs are more talented and the differential is greater than fans realize when they say, oh, you could just take one whenever in the 5th round, 6th round, 7th round. And sure, everybody can bring up examples. of some UDFA guy that came out of nowhere. The vast majority, like 70% plus of the premium running backs in the NFL are day 2 picks. It's not 5th and 6th and 7th round picks. Most of them are in that 2nd and 3rd round area. And obviously we know the 1st round guys that have also been taken. So it's not something that you can wait forever on and have actual differentiating material difference talent that is going to be able to scare defenses and make a big difference. You know, even the values that people got on Jonathan Taylor and Alvin Kamara and those different pieces, they're still day 2 picks.
Right.
So I do think that the Bills need to have their eyes open at 57 or 89. And I know that might mean not taking a wide receiver early or a cornerback early or a guard early. I do think those are in play. That if you get
you could have Jonathan Taylor at 25 and have him be the 20th highest paid running back in the league, I would do it 100 times in a row. I think the point you brought up is great, because this is the conversation that I always have with people, which is don't take a running back early. You can get them in the 6th round. It happens all the time. You can get them in the 4th, 5th round. It happens all the time. I went through probably 3 years ago, I went through for the 5 years prior to that. Every single
they
running
pick
back
out the examples, not the other 80
Correct.
that got picked.
More guys per round start to get picked after those first 3 rounds. And so it's more of a numbers game that yes, one of those guys is going to pan out and become an example, but you're not talking about the 6 guys that got picked in those 2 rounds with him either, that nobody ever hears of from
won't pan out.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're talking about those first 2 rounds, I think the first round, production wise, whether or not those teams go on to have success or the second contracts for those running backs are good, that's a different conversation. But those first round picks have been fine in terms of production for the most part. The 2nd and 3rd are better because you're getting a better value. So that obviously makes sense that you're going to get better production from those, but you're still hitting on a number of those. So I love that idea. And to the point Joe made, I love Joe. I love his show. I listen to it every single day. I agree with the idea, like you said, that yes, you're getting Groot as the 90th. Yes. Fantastic value. Great. But if you're going to tell me that I can get one of the best 2 running backs in this draft, which I think are both dynamic players that would make this offense a lot better, and they would be hovering around JD McKissick's average value, around Gus Edwards, Christopher Carson, right with Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, Kenyon Drake, like they're in that range, I would absolutely sign up for a dynamic running back in those guys' price range. And I would have no problems with that, but that's just me.
Okay. So, and we'll see. I mean, obviously the comments from Brandon Beane, he has said he is not a guy who locks off the fact of, I will never take a running back in the first round. I will say his history shows he strongly favors premium positions. He does. But
he's done it. Well, he's been part of front office again.
Correct. He didn't stop David Gettleman from drafting Christian McCaffrey.
They did. Well, in 2006, they took D'Angelo Williams, I think, first.
And then back to back.
In 2008, took Jonathan Stewart, which, again, that was Gettleman, but Brandon Beane was part of that. And it was a long time ago. I think running back conversation has changed a little bit since then. But then Christian McCaffrey was Beane's last draft, and he was happy to spend a premium pick there. So he's got a record of at least being part of organizations that did it. And then he's come out on and made a statement that he would, depending on the value. And so I think that's where we need to keep our minds open, is it's where you are in the draft versus how that board falls versus who are those guys that are available. It's a very sort of flexible thing that, in my opinion, I don't think you should not box yourself into, I'm never going to do this, because there's too many variables and too much context that could go in and year out.
Yeah. And, ultimately, the people that we joke about the debates we've had in DMs with Bruce Nolan. Bruce is one of the sharpest, smartest people that I've been around. But when I ask him, so you're saying if Barry Sanders' 1988 Oklahoma State season happened again, you still wouldn't take Barry Sanders in the first round? And his answer is no, I wouldn't. All right. I can't debate
each their own. Yeah.
I can't debate that. If you're saying that, no, I still wouldn't take the 1988 Oklahoma State Barry Sanders season in the first round, and you don't think you could make value from that and produce value from that, I can't.
There's a lot of ways to build a roster, a lot of ways to do these things. My way is not the only right way.
No, I'm wrong.
The the Rams have had success, but their way isn't the only right way of just getting rid of first round picks forever and not even caring about them.
All the way,
and as much as I love Bruce, that way of just being stuck on it is not the only right way, right? It's all a philosophy conversation, but I just think people's philosophy should be a little looser into, hey, there's a bunch of scenarios where it does make a little bit of sense to do something like that. And I think the Bills are close to a scenario like that, and that could be presented to them in this draft. I don't think it will be. Most of the ones that I've run through in the mocks I've run through, running back round 1 isn't the thing. But in this conversation that comes up every single year, I would do it.
So we'll see where it goes. I think it's a healthy debate. I think it's a healthy discussion. That's why we wanted to lay out our philosophy on it and the way we approach it. And I agree. I don't. That's not what I expect. That's not what I think is going to happen. But that I do think a running back in one of those premium round picks, one of those first 3 picks, is very much in play. And I think the second and third round fans need to brace themselves that that's very possible. We could see a running back on day 2. So as we shift into our closing here and everything going on, make sure you're checking out our friends over at bookseats.com. Again, they're hooking Aaron and Eric and I up. We're heading out to the draft. We're going to be doing coverage for them all week long, all kinds of cool videos, all kinds of stuff going on there. Going to have a good time giving you guys immediate breakdowns and reactions to all the picks, analysis and everything going on. And we're going to be showing you the awesome flights they're sending us out there on, and the rooms they're putting us up in. It's going to be fantastic. What are some of your things you're watching out for as we shift into full draft mode the rest of the way here?
Yeah, so now that we're into full draft mode, I got to get on my soapbox for a second, in that the thing that frustrates me the most about draft is how we all interact with each other in terms of this process of looking at players, scouting players, doing mock drafts, talking about the processes that teams go through. I don't love how the discourse is on Twitter of, there's so many people that are speaking in absolutes of like we've been saying in this conversation here. Oh, just trade up, just trade back. Like those types of ideas, as if trading up or down is a rare outcome of a draft pick. Most draft positions stay where they're at and they take a player. So it's a rare outcome that somebody's going to make a trade. You cannot predict these types of things. That's why I love that the mock draft simulators allow for trades, because it's a good thought process. But
because there are 4 or 5 trades in every round. But that also means that 25 to 28 picks don't get traded and make the pick in the slot they're in.
Yes. And so it's fun to be able to have those conversations and what you would like to do. But this idea of like, oh, well, if the board falls that way, just trade back. Like these things, these absolutes don't exist. He won't be there is another one that I always get. This guy won't be there. There's no way that guy's there. Every single year we do this, and guys fall and things happen and guys end up in rounds. It's funny. I was talking to you here pre-show, and Nazar Ladine, the guy who's a draft crush of Bills Mafia.
Yeah. I wanted Hobson Nasruddin so bad.
Everyone wanted him. These traits. Oh, and I remember the conversations were like, oh, we got to get up and get him. Like he's going to be gone. And then he was hanging out there, and the Bills passed on him a bunch of times, and he did nothing.
6th round.
Yeah.
Couldn't even break the Jets had a horrible defense. Couldn't break their lineup.
Correct.
Played for a little bit and got benched immediately, and then only played special teams. It was a healthy scratch 6 times.
We go through this process and we just overanalyze these prospects. We overanalyze their RAS scores. We look at them and we look at their highlights and just plug them into our team and think, oh, this is going to make all the difference in the world. And I get it. It's fun. It's hope. It's the things that fans this is what makes you a fan is, hey, I can just get this and my team will be over the top. But we don't know any of the stuff we're talking about. And if anyone's trying to sell you, there's a few people I think that do. Eric Turner here, Cover One, Ross, Anthony Prohaska does a great job grinding. The air raid guys grind a bunch. Joe Marino, he gets paid to grind. There's a bunch of guys that, this is their job and they do a good job. But a lot of us, it's a lot of projection and it's a lot of, we hope. So I think you meant to say
parroting. There's a lot of parroting.
There's a lot of parroting going on. But so I guess my soapbox, my final thought is, don't speak in absolutes. Don't talk about things that you don't necessarily know. You can say, I think this guy won't be there, or I don't see this guy being there, but it absolutely drives me crazy if I post the mock and everyone's like, there's no way McCreary's going to be there. It's like, dude, I don't make the board.
We don't know.
The people that make the board don't know. Their board is going to be wrong. PFF's board is going to be wrong. All of this is going to be wrong. So if you're basing your ideas on what you're seeing in mocks and what you're seeing talked about on Twitter, a lot of it's not going to be right. And so don't speak in absolutes when talking about the draft. This is a process that we're all just kind of learning together. And that's it. That's my soapbox. Don't speak in absolutes is an absolute. It's the ultimate absolute, though. It's
the one acceptable absolute. So one quick thing I know that's come up, and I actually had this conversation in DMs with Joe Biscaglia. The fact that Von Miller is listed as a linebacker is only so he's allowed to wear number 40.
Right.
That's it. He's not a linebacker. He is purely an edge rusher and a defensive end. But if they list him as a defensive end, he's ineligible to wear number 40. And he wanted to wear number 40, which in a 3-4 defense, they list their edge rushers as linebackers, which is why separately the Tremaine Edmonds franchise tag number would be crazy, because guys like Von Miller and Khalil Mack and Zadarius Smith are listed as linebackers. Well, instead,
premium position, right?
They rush the passer 95% of the time and drop into coverage here or there, the same way Jerry Hughes and Greg Rousseau did. Exact same ratios, exact same position. Von Miller is an edge rusher only. He is not a linebacker.
Now that
they list him at linebacker so he can wear number 40, full stop.
This is sort of archaic, because now that we have linebackers wearing single digits, I feel like everything's off the table. Like, let a edge wear 40. Who cares?
It is weird that that's one of the few rules that you can't do. I don't really get it.
Yeah, it's a weird rule.
Yeah, Matt Judon can be number 9, but Von Miller can't be 40. I don't really understand why.
Come on, NFL.
Case, but, whatever. So, yeah, just a quick clarification. Von Miller is not a linebacker. He's just listed that way so he can wear the number he wants. That's it. So make sure you're checking out all the shows we have going on the lineup. Great coverage for you. We've got 9 shows every single week. We've got 2 on Monday, Tuesday. So going through, you got the roundup, you got the air raid hour. Then on Tuesday, you got the film room and you got the hoof. On Wednesdays, you got disguise coverage and Aaron and I here with Cover One Buffalo. On Thursdays, you've got the draft show with Rich and with Russ. And then you've got the air raid hour coming back a second time. And then we've got our new show Going Deep on Friday nights with Kevin Massar and Mike Bunt. Make sure you're checking them out. New show that we have heading out, but all kinds of fun stuff for you. We're going to be here for you, bringing on some cool guests to be able to do some mock drafts for you guys and some draft content as we get ramped up until we're out there live for you. Then we'll be doing content. Guys will be live for the draft here on the show, and Aaron, Eric, and I will be dropping videos all the whole time that will be out there on social media. So Aaron, any final things for the people before we sign off?
No, man, I'm excited to kick off this process and get caught up with everyone else. So it's going to be fun here. I think we're doing it right this year, though. We're not going to over analyze ourselves with the draft, which last year I think both of us felt we came out of that draft process and none of our mocks were right. And none of the things we said were right. And we were like, God, we wasted like 3 months on this stuff. God. So now we'll only have wasted a month.
Yeah, I'm going to waste a month of my life.
That's right.
And then I'm going to dive deep into the guys the Bills actually draft, then I'll move forward. I'm not doing what I did last year. I made myself nuts. I'll just be wrong anyways, and then I'll study the guys that they actually pick. So on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo, and we are out.